Greetings all. I would like to talk to you today about poet Derrick Hudson, the disadvantaged poet who needed to pretend. In 2014, a Chinese woman named Yi-Fen Chou got a poem published in Prairie Schooner. The credit eventually led to her poem securing a spot in the Best American Poetry of 2015, edited by Sherman Alexie. But the poet Yi-Fen Chou never existed. A white man named Derrick Hudson did, and Chou, the name of his former classmate, became his hopeful key into the quote-unquote DEIA of the poetry gates. Derrick Hudson came clean to Alexie after acceptance, and his contributor's note in the anthology said the following: "After a poem of mine has been rejected a multitude of times under my real name, I put Yi-Fen's name on it and send it out again. As a strategy for placing poems, this has been quite successful for me. The poem in question was rejected under my real name 40 times before I sent it out as Yi-Fen Chou. I keep detailed submission records. As Yi-Fen, the poem was rejected 9 times before Prairie Schooner took it. If indeed this is one of the best American poems of 2015, it took quite a bit of effort to get it into print, but I'm nothing if not persistent." Just a quick aside, as a poet myself, I've had poems that have found homes after a decade, sometimes more, of sending them out. And I rarely send out to just one magazine at a time. 40 rejections isn't a tragic unicorn number of unfairness toward white people. Publishing is a numbers game, and a difficult one when you're knocking on the doors of top-tier places or desperately trying to find a press for your collection. But back to it. If Hudson kept such meticulous records of his successes in literary racism, where are they? He offered zero proof beyond his word. Surely such a thorough paper trail would be easy to produce, acceptances and rejections from the publications included. Yet I could find nothing beyond the Best American Poetry snafu. Many took the bragging of his method to mean poetry has swung so far woke that minorities were getting unduly accepted. They never questioned for a moment how many people of color need to use white-sounding names to increase the chances of getting a callback for a job interview, even in our current year, or how publishing opportunities seem to dry up when a person of color dares to write outside a specific narrative. Some even said Prairie Schooner had rejected Hudson's poem previously under his own name and then accepted it under his pseudonym, though I was unable to find documentation this was the case. Let's pause for a minute and assume Prairie Schooner did indeed reject the poem The Bees, the Flowers, Jesus, Ancient Tigers, Poseidon, Adam and Eve before. It is not unheard of for a literary magazine to reject someone and then, as time goes by, accept a piece they previously had no interest in, without the author obfuscating their identity. This most commonly happens when staff changes, years have passed, or a different first reader gets their hands on it. I don't know what their masthead looked like in 2014, but Prairie Schooner has always had multiple readers. In 2025, well over 25 people could have someone's writing in front of them at any given time. People are contributing malicious wokeness when Occam's razor suggests many parts of a moving whole is the culprit. Again, if they actually rejected his poem prior. Critics were on the money when it came to the pen name getting Hudson in the door with the Best American Poetry anthology. Sherman Alexie, an indigenous writer, admitted he looked closer at feminine names and names that suggested the writer was a person of color. Ultimately, one of the aspects that drew him to the poem was the juxtaposition of the iconography in the poem, suggesting European or Christian fascination and the Asian name. It kept him going back. If the name wouldn't have mattered, Hudson's poem might have never made the jump into the anthology. It was in the maybe pile, but does that make Hudson justified? Of course not. A white person putting on the persona of someone from another ethnicity for the potential meager benefits without any of the consequences or disadvantage of systematic racism, or even a scrap of consideration for the community they're taking from, is cultural appropriation, entitlement, and racism. Something many white, cishet, non-disabled people engage in. Did he uplift marginalized voices after his little stunt? No. Did he understand anything other than taking what he wanted, as colonizers have done for centuries? No. Is what he did in any way comparable to a woman author taking a male pseudonym in the past? Surely not. But I'm white. I understand at least some of the issues of someone of privilege calling out someone else on behalf of a minority group, so I'm going to tell you what a couple of Asian writers had to say. Writer Amy King said, Michael Derrick Hudson denigrates the experiences of Asian and Asian American writers by appropriating one of their names for his own gain. He abstracts the realities and experiences, including all of the aggressions and stereotypes they've been forced to face with a frequency white people don't have to imagine nor want to, by reducing bodies of work into a one-issue claim defined by Hudson, and insinuates that those experiences are just identity politics, which he implies gives them an advantage in publishing. The irony drips from a bio that does not reveal a lifetime of white male privilege he's enjoyed, and one that makes him proud to have pulled the ruse by playing Yellowface. Writer Jane Wong says, part of Hudson's goal in revealing himself as white is to say that POC poets do not deserve their successes. That line in parentheses, I keep detailed submission records, is threatening, is saying, believe me, it's hard being a white writer. I have the facts to prove it. Am I surprised asshole poets like this exist? No. I've been told by many white writers that I should be thankful for being a POC, that I need to take a moratorium on submitting because you have to save room for the rest of us white people. I almost want to laugh and cry in exhaustion. Hudson and people defending Hudson have no idea what POC writers have to work against and through to even do what we love to do. I came to poetry not to be bullied, but because it was a refuge. And here, in this state of constant emergency, I have to continue to work against poets like Hudson while also writing what I love. Some writers of color also had words for Sherman Alexie's decision to keep the poem in the anthology, not the least of which being that his decision emboldened the idea that white people just can't get ahead in poetry anymore. The poor dears. Then again, Prairie Schooner has yet to publish my white ass, so it must be true. After this went down a decade ago, one of the first things I did was look up Hudson's list of publications, with the explicit implication he was having such difficulty publishing that the only recourse he had was to resort to smug racial trickery. I went in thinking this was a down-on-his-luck newbie trying whatever unsavory, bigoted thing he could just to break through. Unless he used a pen name for all of his published poems, he didn't, I checked. This dude had some bylines I couldn't bribe a demon for after over 2 decades of writing professionally, including the Iowa Review, West Branch, and The Poetry Magazine, which took 2 of his poems. And he did this as a white man before the scandal broke, something people defending him assured themselves was impossible after his little stunt. Poetry is not a billion-dollar genre. There is nowhere, at least in the United States, that a poet will be mobbed by the paparazzi while going to the post office. Looking for prestige and fame in poetland, outside segments of the secluded Ouroboros we call academia, is like high diving into a reflecting pool. If he didn't need tenure, which his other top-tier publications would have helped with regardless, why even bother? Harmful duplicity in exchange for bylines doesn't sound like a good enough trade. Michael is still publishing as recently as this month under his own name. His recent credits include another Chicago magazine and New Ohio Review. I'd like to note that MDH was far from the first person to attempt this. In the early 90s, a middle-aged white man named Kent Johnson pretended to be a poet who survived the bombing of Hiroshima to get his work noticed, adding tragedy porn on top of his racism. And it was working before he was found out. There was no DEIA back then to blame for this pathetic white dude needing to concoct an Asian identity to get published. I guess certain people will have to scream about affirmative action instead. You may be asking, Jennifer Ruth, why bring up a couple of rare cases of mediocre white men from a decade or much longer ago? Because, lovelies, history loves to play my least favorite songs ad nauseum, and in part 2, I want to discuss Aaron Berry, aka Jasper Ceylon, aka Adele Nwankwo.